Rick Tocchet joins us on 31 Thoughts, the podcast, and I'm going to turn the recreation over here to Elliot because we share a fascination for the year 1987 and everything that happened to hockey in 1987. You were a big part of a number of key events, and one that was pivotal, Rick, in young Elliot Friedman's life.
So this is my Rick Tocchet story that you don't even know you're part of, okay? So that year I was going into grade 12, and my father that year said, you know, you are the biggest slacker, and we're putting an end to that. You are taking school seriously this year. So it turned out I had a report due on September 16th, 1987. And that September 15th, the night before it was due, I'm sitting down in front of the TV. It's Game 3, Canada, Soviet Union in the Canada Cup, the greatest hockey I've ever seen. And my dad says to me, "What are you doing?" I go, "Oh, I got a report due tomorrow. I'm writing it while I'm watching the game." And he goes, "No, you're not." And I said, "What do you mean, no, I'm not? I'm fine. I got no problem here." He goes, "You are not allowed to turn on that game until you finish that report." I'm like, "What?" He actually grabbed the converter, he shut off the TV, and he took it away from me. So I zoomed through that report. Like it was good, but I blasted through it like the most attention I've ever paid to anything. And I turn on the TV, and the first thing I see is you scoring a power play goal 10 minutes in, and Dan Kelly, who's calling it, goes, "And Canada is finally in the game," or something, down 3-1. And I was like, "What? It was 3-0? I missed all this?" So two things. Number one, you guys wouldn't have won that series if I hadn't turned on the TV and finished my report. And secondly, you know, Rick, I think in North America, we knew you were a really good player. That series, to me, really put you on the map where people realized you were a world-class player.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I thought you were going to say, what's he doing on the ice? You got Messi, Gretzky, Kyle. Yeah, well, Elliot, I was on that bench, and we were down 3-0. Mike Keenan, you know, Mike, he was trying to push buttons. He said, "Get out there on a 5-on-3." And I swear, I sat there. He said, "Get the effing out there," and pushed me. And we went out there and thought of Brian Propp, I think Dougie Gilmer or Brent Sutter was out there, and we ended up scoring. But you know, once we scored again, and I knew that I did my job. Then the big boys took over. So it was a great time.
There's so much from '87, and I know we have a finite amount of time with you, but I do want to get your reaction to one thing, and it still drops my jaw when I see it again, and I think to myself, "Whoa, that's a huge move." I can't believe he's doing this, and I can only imagine what the players are thinking. It's late in the game. This is on the Lemieux goal. It's a face-off in Canada's zone. Mike Keenan calls Messier off the ice and puts in Dale Hawerchuk. Let me just let the gravity sink in.
Yeah.
Calls Messier off the ice. No, Hawerchuk has taken the draw. What went through your heads up and down that bench?
I mean, you know, Mike, you know, he did a lot of different things like that. He must have had that feeling. You know, I don't know what, but when he did that, you're right, to pull Mark Messier off the ice, and obviously it worked out. But here's the caveat to this. So, you know, I didn't play for 8-9 minutes because, you know, they were rolling, you know, Gretzky, Lemieux, which they should be. So it's the last minute, we're up 6-5. I'm out the last minute. Like, I mean, I haven't played 8 minutes. My legs are like, but the adrenaline stuff, that's what Mike did. You know, that's the sort of things he did. He'd pull certain guys on and off. There's so many stories from that 87, that summer that.
Tell one. Tell your favorite one.
Well, the best is, though, so I come, you know, I was playing for Mike Keenan in Philly, and, you know, he's a little bit of a drill sergeant. So I had Edmonton guys come in, and they wanted, you know, steak and ice cream and stuff. And Mike said, "No, we didn't have that in Philly." He was ahead of his time, you know, with the proper foods and stuff. And I remember Messi comes in and Gretzky, and they go, "Where's the steak and where's the ice cream?" And they look at me and Brian Propp. We're just not saying anything. And it says, "Mike doesn't have it." He goes, and Messi goes, "Mike doesn't want it. Watch this." We marched into Mike. "You either put steak here and ice cream, or I won't be here for the summer." Like, cause you know, back then we took a month off the whole summer. Mm-hmm. And then so part of your summer, especially those guys, they won the cup. So, but we had steaks within like 20 minutes, and we had a big tub of ice cream within 20 minutes. So, but that sort of stuff.
What was it like? I mean, that room. Was there a division between the Flyers? This was always the rumor.
Yeah.
Oh, it's right down the middle. There's the Oilers, and there's the Flyers.
The Islanders and
Oilers in '84.
There was a little bit of stuff, but I got to tell you, I became best friends with Paul Coffey in '87. Yeah. Mike Keenan roomed with Wayne Gretzky for about 2 weeks. That's how I became friends with Wayne. That's when he started dating Janet Jones. So, and I remember Wayne's keep it quiet. I remember that. So I was very lucky, and we had a great group of guys. I mean, so there was no division at all.
So, Rick, we're in Toronto, which is your home. You were a long shot to make it. You were a late draft pick, and here you are now. It's been 35 years. You're still in hockey. You're coaching now. I wonder, when you look at your journey and what you expected and where you thought you'd be at this point in your life, how far you have exceeded your own expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I'm blessed. I mean, everything I've got is from the NHL, whether it's playing and coaching. The friends, the people I've met, I'm really blessed, lucky to be involved with the NHL. I mean, I remember 16, I was going to Sault Ste. Marie, and I hurt my knee, and I remember, usually they send you down to Tier 2, and I remember Terry Chris said, we're going to keep you for a week, or your knee better, but, when you're ready to get back in the lineup. And I remember when I hit the ice, and I remember that I had to do something, and I ended up getting in a fight. I went to the net, and I scored a goal, and they ended up kept me. And then I played 3 years for the Sioux Greyhounds, and Terry Chris went down to the table in Montreal, the draft, and that's where they had the 6 rounds and another 6, and I was like near the end of the 6th round. So Terry Chris, I owe him a lot. He's the guy that got me drafted to Philadelphia.
And did you have any idea that the Flyers were interested in you? Did you think anybody was there?
No, I talked to a couple of teams that, like I was kind of a late guy. I thought Buffalo. I talked to Buffalo a little bit, a couple of teams like that. But when I got to 4th, 5th round, because I heard some teams might take me, and then I was like the 6th round, and I was with my brother in the stands. We're way up there, and he said, "Well, we're either going to eat steak here before the 6th round ends, or we're going to go to that Barbie bar." Remember the Barbie bar,
yes.
The chicken place? So
yes,
we ended up eating steak. So we got a little lucky. Yeah.
When you look at me now, of course, the head coach in the NHL, and you've been coaching for a while now, and you mentioned Mike Keenan earlier. I mean, you've been blessed by having some real good coaches. Yeah. How much do you look at and say, you know what, I'm doing this because of that coach. I learned this from this coach. Who are some of the influences on you? And how much of the Rick Tocchet style can we say, okay, that's this guy and this is that guy?
Like, I really enjoyed playing for Mike. Obviously, some of the tactics he probably can't do nowadays. Jim Schoenfeld, it was more of a father figure. I really liked Jimmy. Scotty Bowman, genius behind the bench. I wouldn't say he's not a huge communicator, but he was more of a bench guy, a real thought the game out. So you take a little bit of everybody. And for me, like nowadays, the coach, you got to be a communicator. The X and O's are great. You have to have some X and O's as a coach, but if you can't communicate with a young player, and I'm not saying you're buddies with them, but you have to understand them, and you have to spend a lot of time with them, and you got to touch them somehow every day. Whether it's a couple of minutes, or I don't think you can go very often without talking to a player. Because they feel that you're not on the same page or whatever. And they want to know things, and that's the one thing I've tried to especially the last 3-4 years. Coming from Pittsburgh, I think I've improved on that coaching.
Curious as a coach now how you define positions. Because when you played, career numbers, I want to say 450 goals, 2,900 penalty minutes, plus everything that you did in the playoffs as well. You were, it was you and Cam Neely, the prototypical power forward in the NHL. Oh, power forward. Oh, yeah, Tocchet, Neely, these types of guys. What's a power forward now? 2019, how do you define a power forward?
Well, honestly, it's a 200-foot game. It's somebody that can change the game by simply winning a battle down low and getting the puck out, or scoring a goal in front of the net. I mean, Patrice Bergeron, to me, Johnny Tavares, guys like that play 200 feet. That's a power. No, they're not going to go and fight. They're not going to change the momentum of fight because listen. There's fighting's out of the game. Like there's very rarely fights, but they can change the game with whether it's a defensive. Something they've done defensively. Obviously, they score goals. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But the stuff that I've seen these guys do, they sacrifice. Chipping a body, getting in front of somebody, getting under. Getting under somebody's stick. Ovechkin's there, and somehow they strip the puck off Ovechkin. That's a power forward move nowadays. That's what I think, at least.
We're sitting here on a Sunday, hours before you're going to play Toronto. Yeah. You look at the standings. You guys are near there, and you've had a crippling list of injuries this year, including to goal in goal. Yeah. Do you allow yourself to think, I'm doing a good job here, squeezing everything I can out of these guys?
Well, I'll tell you what, we went through the why is it always us? The start of the year, we had some last year. Then we finally got some, we had some traction. thought we were playing good. We were a couple of games over 500, and we started to come. Then we had all these injuries, and I think there's always negativity around. And I think about a month ago, we just said, we can't worry about what we can't control as a staff and even as an organization. We have great people there. And I'll be honest with you, we got guys from Tucson up, and we got guys who are fourth-line players are playing third line or are now second. And it's opportunity, and we're a day-to-day team. Our energy level's been great. I got to give the players a lot of credit. We could have, a month ago mailed it in and chalk it up. We'll get another high draft pick. But I think it's a kind of the mantra right now is that we want to outwork the other team. Can we get in shootouts? Obviously not. We're playing the Leafs. I mean, we have to be diligent on our details if we're going to win this game. We understand that. But guys have rallied together. They've rallied together, and I got to give them a lot of credit.
We talked to John Chayka for this podcast, and we talked about Arizona and what are the truths and the fallacies about trying to be successful there. What's the biggest thing that you've learned about what's the truest thing about Arizona, and what's the biggest misconception about Arizona?
Well, listen, I took the job a year ago. I played in Arizona in 2000. Keith Tkachuk, Jeremy Roenick, Habib Bullen. We had some good teams, and I'll tell you, the fans were incredible. The pack down America West. So I know there's a market there, right? So taking over now, you come to teams not winning and people don't come, and it's like Arizona, so there's a lot of negativity. So I guess the fallacy is, you have to win, obviously, like any market, but it is a good hockey market. It can be an excellent place to play, and I think we get so much negativity because we haven't won in the past, and for whatever reason, now I think we're getting a little traction, and we're just trying to keep the ball rolling here. It is the most important thing for us to get people to start coming to the games.
As Elliot mentioned, we talked to John a couple of weeks ago for the podcast, and we talked about Clayton Keller a bunch. We talked about his draft day and teams trying to move up to get him, the Rangers. I think St. Louis might have been in that mix as well, trying to get up to grab Clayton Keller. He falls into Arizona's lap. Like Arizona, oh man, Keller's still available. Don't run to the podium to say his name. You're his head coach. How good can this guy be? Do you see a ceiling for Clayton Keller?
Yeah, he's he can be a very elite player. And it's my job, and I take this very seriously because, we rely on this kid so much. I might sometimes overplay him, and sometimes we want him to score so bad that we forget about other parts of the game. So we've toned it down a bit. I've actually not played him as much to make sure his game stays on par in his development. Mm-hmm. I don't want to put too much pressure on him because I know he takes it he takes it to heart when he's not scoring. Mm-hmm. But I think overall, this last 2-3 weeks, he's played his best hockey this year because there's other parts of the game, and he'll score. To me, it's about being a complete player, and I don't want him to think that he has to carry the Arizona Coyotes on his back because it's not a fair thing to put him on his, to make him go out there and he needs some players to help him, and that's what we're trying to supply him with.
I hear that it's not unusual when you go out to dinner for you to take the salt and pepper shakers and start making plays. Is that true?
Well, that's from the Pittsburgh days with Crosby. The thing when you coach the Crosbys and Malkins, Kessel of the world, they challenge you. They challenge you in a good way. Like, hey, what about this? What about that? So you have to think of different plays. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've had that. I've had that. I had to get the.
So tell us about that. So you're sitting down for dinner and they'll challenge you, and how do those what do they challenge you on? What goes?
Well, I've since texted you before, like, hey, I've watched. Did you see the San Jose play? Mm-hmm. Off the draw? San Jose does a nice job on face-off plays. And I go, yeah, I saw it. And then he goes, well, what do you think? So, let's talk tomorrow morning about it, right? So now, I'd be with Mike Sullivan or whoever's there, Sergei Gonchar, and we'd be like, well, if this guy goes here, this guy goes there, and now the lady's coming over with our steak, and now you got to move the steak over. But the fact is, yeah, you would do that. And it's just a challenging part because I that's why I love being in Pittsburgh at that time. Yeah. It really challenged me to be a better coach because these guys ask you some questions. You better be ready for those questions.
Gretzky, there's the story about Gretzky who you knew well about how he'd give pop quizzes to players. And Brad Treliving, the GM in Calgary, was saying about Matthew Tkachuk that they're blown away by how much hockey he watches. Is there a legitimate difference between the guys who watch and the guys who don't?
100%. Yes, hockey nerds. Keller's a hockey nerd. Crosby's a hockey nerd. These guys, they like watching the games. Now, I'm not saying they're going to sit there all day, but they pick out something and they think in their head, can we do this on our team? can we do this play? Or did you watch? Liney, did you see that play he made? They know. Plus, they watch how you watch you guys. There's always the TVs are always got the highlights going. So it really challenges coach. There's nothing you can hide as a coach. They know everything. They really do, and you just got to make sure you temper. Hey, we can't do that, because it could get out of hand. But it was great. It was a great learning experience for me when I went to Pittsburgh, for sure.
For the longest time, there was the feeling that you can't teach touch. You either are a goal scorer or you're not. And there was a feeling that coaches can't teach offense. You can teach defense and teach players how to defend, but again, to teaching touch, you can't teach offense. Is that still true, Rick?
I think certain parts of the skill part, it's hard. I mean, you can work on your skill, but some guys have it. Yeah. But I think you can teach guys to score in the sense that there's certain areas you got to go. Some guys are, a little shy. They don't go to the net as much. And somehow as a coach, you got to get them to go there. And it's not screaming and yelling all the time. It's basically other different methods to get them to go to those areas and make them understand if you're here, and use examples if you can use star players. Look at this guy; he's not a big player.
Yeah.
Look where he scores most of his goals. So I think there's a lot of different tactics, but to some guys, it is hard to teach a real skill guy the skill stuff. But I still think you can teach guys to score for sure.
Have any of your players ever seen your highlights on YouTube or on video anywhere and come up to you and said, "Holy smokes"?
Well, it's funny because Mike Sullivan did it last year. It's just 2 years ago. So he took the job a month later, and we were in Florida. And we're actually kind of, he said, I don't even think these guys have ever seen some of your highlight tapes. So he put about 5 fights on the pregame meal. And I remember Gino Malkin looks over and goes, "Oh my God, coach, I didn't know you did that." So, some guys might do, I don't know. But,
exciting because I was at the game in Toronto where who did Wendel Clark hit? And
Mark Howe.
Mark Howe, that's right.
Yeah. And Sutter did the flyby, and Wendel was ready, and then Rick came in.
That one gets played everywhere.
Well, the night before, too, my buddies are I forget where the dinner, and they're like, "Wendel Clark, he's killing guys. He's beating people up. And I'm like, "Shut up. I just want to eat I don't want to think about fighting Wendel Clark. Can I eat my meal, right?" But that's what I liked about back then. It was just passion. It wasn't staged. That's why I love Wendel Clark and the Cam Neelys and those guys. It was never staged. It wasn't like, "Oh, here's Cam Neely, I'm going to go fight him." It was, what happened. So that's the part of fighting I like. The stage stuff, I agree with everybody. Get rid of it, but the passionate stuff, I think there was a place for it, and sometimes there is a place now for it.
That fight with Clark that Elliot mentions, you always look at the best events that happened in a certain rink, and for the longest time, Kurtenbach and Terry Harper was the best fight at Maple Leaf Gardens until there was your fight with Wendel Clark. Was that if you can categorize or put a hierarchy to it? Was that your favorite fight you ever had in the NHL?
So.
I mean, you had some.
Yeah, because I had a lot of respect for Wendel, and there was a lot of swinging and. It was in Toronto.
And his helmet's down over his eyes.
Yeah,
like you can't even see.
Good,
plus in Toronto, my parents, my family, my mom's covering her eyes. Yeah, it's the whole thing of it. Yeah, it was great. It was great. Yeah, for sure.
I remember asking Brad May once. I said, "Mayday, was there ever a team that you always wanted to play for but never did, but always imagined yourself in the jersey?" And he said the Boston Bruins. He said, "I always imagine, one day I can play for the Bruins." I said, "Did you ever have a chance?" Because I was between Boston and another team that made an offer, and I ended up taking the other team, but I kind of regret it because I always wanted to wear that jersey, put on that sweater. Was there a team like that for you that you always wanted to play for but never had a chance to?
I would say Canadian City. I'm not going to pick one because the other cities will get mad at me, but I was a big Montreal Canadian fan, even though from Toronto. I loved the way that they could, back in the day, they could. You want to play it rough, they could play it rough. You want to skate, they skate. So I loved that part of the Montreal Canadiens. But how great would it be playing Toronto or Montreal or Ottawa, Vancouver, Edmonton? Never had a chance to play for Canadian City. So I would say that. It's no regrets, but I wish I did play for Canadian City because, it's hockey and there's a buzz to it. And I think the players actually sometimes when they're, maybe in other markets they're not playing as well and they're just I think a little bit of heat and a little bit of the passion kind of gets your game back again. And I don't mind that at all. I think it can actually help teams that come here because they see how everybody is excited about hockey.
Okay, you're at a table.
Yep.
You've got $1 million in poker chips. Travis Green has $1 million in poker chips. Who wins?
What about Kessel?
Is Kessel that good?
He's a good poker player.
Okay, so let's add Kessel. 3 of you with $1 million, and you can put anyone else in there you want at the table. Who's the best poker player? in hockey?
Best poker player in hockey, yeah, that's a good one. Greeny's pretty good. Greeny's pretty good poker player. Well, we used to play some poker back in the day in Phoenix, and Kachuk and Roenick were, I mean, they used to pay for all my meals. Those guys are fishes. But Greeny's very analytical. Like Kessel's aggressive, but he's a smart guy. He's friends with that Danny Negreanu, so he gets his tips from those guys. But that would be a good one. Maybe Greeny might win it a little bit. Greeny's a little bit more patient than us, probably.
Mm-hmm. Do you still play at all?
Not very often. Yeah. Once in a while I'll play. Down the Arizona Casino, they have a poker room. Once in a blue moon, there you go there to. It's actually a stress reliever, right? I
agree.
It.
Yeah,
but not as much as I used to. I know Greeny used to play a lot in those tournaments and stuff like that. But yeah, used to have. They don't have the poker games back in the day like they used to. Nobody plays like they used to. To pass the time on flights. A lot of guys, iPads, a lot of movies, and but we have guys that play these different funky card games. I don't know, they're all different now. They have 7 cards in your hand, and I don't know, they're weird.
I have a bunch of guys going back to high school that we play cards, and I miss it. We all have families now. We don't have time anymore, but we have these stupid lottery games. One's called Magic, one's called Packages, and they're completely idiotic. They almost take no skill to win, but we love them. We cannot stop playing them every time.
But I think that's what the guys play in the back of the planes.
Yeah,
those type of games.
Yeah.
It passes the time. We fly a lot, eh?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times, those guys are doing that sort of stuff to pass the time.
A lot of young players, of course, in the NHL. It's a younger league than it's ever been. If you would compare it and contrast it with when you first broke in, going from Sault Ste. Marie to the Philadelphia Flyers to now, what do you look at and what makes you sort of shake your head and say, wow, things have changed?
Well, I mean, it's funny. I was listening to Ken Hitchcock talk about that the other day, and it's true. Like, when we played younger, the coach say, go forecheck and do this, and you just did it. And as it evolved, now they want to know why. And it's some, and I know Hitch said it, what's in it for them. I mean, you got to somehow tell him why it's important for them to do it. So I would say that this generation, they want to know, and they want to know the questions, the answers to their questions, and why are we doing this? Why are we going to 1-2-2? Why can't we do a different forecheck? They'll ask you, and you have to come up with, well, this is the reason why, because of this, because of that. So then, if they like your answer, they're going to play for it. They'll buy in. And obviously you need your leadership group and all that stuff to help you out, but I think that's probably the biggest thing.
With the influence of analytics more and more in the NHL, and certainly your general manager at the forefront of that, how have you changed your thinking about the game, or how has that type of information influenced how you think about the game now, Rick?
Yeah. I got to tell you, John's been terrific because I know he's been in analytics. He doesn't shove it down my throat. He very rarely talks about it. But don't get me wrong, behind the scenes, they analyze certain players. I'm like kind of an old school coach in the sense that there's got to be the eye test, but there is some numbers there you can't discount. You just can't discount.
Is there anyone you trust more than any other
for the numbers?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Not really. The one thing that they'll give you an analytics numbers on a guy, right? And then when I look at the video, for instance, I kind of make sure that does it correlate with the analytics. But I'm more of an eye test guy, to be honest with you. But John, they do a terrific job in the way they analyze, and he's different than other organizations with analytics. They have a different method and formula to rate players.
What are your practices like?
Well, it comes from Mike Keenan and Sullivan and all those guys. High tempo, 45 minutes, high tempo. I'm not a board. I don't like going to the board. I hate coaches that go to the board all the time. And I more than ever competition, And I keep bringing up Pittsburgh because I was lucky enough to coach those guys. I use the example of Malkin. You do a drill. It's a fluff drill. He's looking in the stands. He's looking at his fingernails. You do a competition drill with some kind of reward. He'll take your head off to get that puck. And so I'm a big believer that these young guys have to be, Sidney Crosby, when we do a 2-on-1, he wants back pressure. He just doesn't want a 2-on-1. He can just go. He wants back pressure. So I try to get that philosophy with our team is when we do drills, it's a lot of competition. You can't do it all the time because of the wear and tear on the body. Sure. But I think to think the game fast, you have to have competition.
You're a pretty patient guy, Rick, but there have been a couple times this year where you, including the game recently last week, where you have publicly said this is not acceptable. Bruce Boudreau took a run on his team last week. Montgomery's done it a couple of times. How does a coach decide when I can do it?
Yeah, you know what? It's a great question, Elliot, because last year when I took the job, it was like 10, 12 games in, and we played Boston, and I probably went over the line and ripped the team. But I just wanted to come here. I wanted to change the culture in the sense, like, you can't accept this effort and then put your suit on and, just go on your merry way in the nice weather. I wanted to kind of make a stand. I probably went over the line. I haven't done as much, but I think you got to be careful. I try not to do individuals. I try to do more group situational. I think that's fine. If you start going individual, it can get personal. But that's a good question. I think it's a feel, and I think sometimes, your leadership group is really important, and they can pick your team up. So if a coach does say something out of the line, they can kind of steer it the right way to the players.
You played, and the players can tune a coach out.
Yeah.
After a while, it just becomes, peppermint patty, and it's just that noise in the background. How do you, as a coach now, how do you get the feeling? When do you know that a team is starting to tune you out and it's time for a new voice? Like, okay, time for the assistants to talk here. I'm going to take a back seat. How do you know?
I just, like, for me, I'm better at that now. As I played, I don't want that coach in your ear. Yeah, because it's that voice. Yeah. And they might be saying the right things, but you got to be careful. I've said a bunch of times, I say to Johnny Mack, Johnny, I can tell they're tired of hearing from me.
Yep.
You talk. During a game, I might go a whole period without saying a word behind the bench other than calling the lineup. And there might sometimes I'll be barking. So it's almost like I try to put myself in their shoes. A guy throws a pizza up the middle. They intercept the pass. They go on a 2-on-1. The guy, they score. If they score or not, they score. I'm not going to go down to the guy and say, why did you do that? I'm going to give him that thing. But if he does it a second time, obviously then there's got to be retribution. I try to give him that, because I agree. When you make a mistake, you don't need the coach to come down and say, why did you throw that puck in the middle? Right? Now, if you do it a second time or a third time, there's got to be consequences. But I try to give that first pass to guys.
I have to tell you, if you were my coach, knowing you, and you didn't speak to me for a whole period, I'd either be thinking, God, I hope we're up 10-0, or B, I'm not going into the dressing room. I'm not going in there, because you would terrify me if you didn't say anything to me a whole period.
Yeah, no, I know. I try not to, sometimes you got to be careful when you talk to young guys,
yes.
So intimidate. But, sometimes you're right. Sometimes saying nothing is good, like things are going well. And then, sometimes you want the players to sort it out themselves, in between periods, I don't like going in the dressing room a lot. Like, I think it's the players' sanctuary. But there's sometimes you have to go in there.
Just a couple more for me. First of all, you mentioned Kessel.
Yeah.
And you reached Kessel probably more than most other coaches have. And I'm not a dump on Kessel guy. I don't believe in it. But, first of all, what's one thing that you would tell people about him that maybe they don't know? And secondly, why do you think that you reached him better than a lot of other coaches have?
He's the fallacy is this tough guy to coach. He's a reasonable guy. You just got to make sure that when you talk to him, you understand him. We were in Pittsburgh. Like Mike Sullivan, when he took that job, he had so much on his plate. We weren't playing well until Mike took over. Sidney Crosby at December, from then on, he was incredible. And his relationship with Sully, they had, he had Malkin. Sergei Goncha was there a lot, and they had things. And he wasn't like outside looking in, but I think Phil just needed somebody to basically say some stuff to, and we just developed a relationship. You know what I mean? And it was, it was a great relationship. And Phil's, he's adamant about stuff, and you have to kind of talk him off a cliff once in a while. But he's not. He's a reasonable guy. He is who he is. You know what I mean? Sometimes, he feels sometimes practice like we're pushing the pace of practice. He said to me, he goes, I don't know why we practice so hard today. And I just we got 15 minutes left. Just do it. Let's get out of here. And he was fine. But if you yell at him, Phil, you better do this, that, then he's gonna buck a little bit. So you just got to reason with him, and he's not as difficult as everybody thinks he is.
Okay. Quick follow up on Phil, if I could, Elliot. Yeah. Thoughts on his stick? The spaghetti
he battled with Claude
noodle.
Julien about that. Like when he was in Boston, they used to fight about that thing.
The flex of it?
And just how he called it, I think Claude Julien called it like a pee-wee stick or something like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm telling you in practice, and he's good friends with Flower. We do these drills early in the practice. He would just kind of throw little muffins at Flower. But if he wants to shoot it, man, I'm telling you, that I don't care what spaghetti thing he's using. That thing whips, and that thing is a hard shot. I mean, I'm impressed. And it's not like Phil, I'll be honest with you, it's not like he shoots a bucket of pucks like Sid Crosby. He's not shooting 100 pucks a day. I mean, he might shoot 15 pucks a practice, but he's just got that gift. He's got a born gift of shooting that puck, and the way he shoots it, and picking corners.
The last one for me, Rick, is Michael Jordan was always a guy, he needed the competition.
Yep.
No matter, like that's why he unretired all those times. It's why he's still in the game. And somebody I asked, where I mentioned you were coming in today, and he said, Rick Tocchet is like that. Like you always need competition. And I just wonder, do you see yourself in hockey until you can't do it anymore because you love the competition of trying to do it?
The day I'm done, and unless they tell me I can't coach anymore, is it has to be the passion competition. I love going on the ice early with the young guys, and I love actually getting in the drills, like teaching them body position and actually getting into it. I got to be careful because sometimes I feel like, I get in there like the other day where with Keller, I go, you got to get body position, come in, and you actually hit the guy. And he's like, so you got to be careful. And I know I get that way sometimes, but and my body can't do it like you said. He can take the puck off me any time. But if I lose that, it would be timing for you to go for sure. I'd have to have that definitely.
The Penguins used to laugh about that, in the drills, like how you would get in there and you would drop them. Like I love that stuff. I think it's fantastic.
I mean, there's some good. I actually did it at the OEL real quick. I did it last year, and I was talking about boxing out. And I go, when a guy does a reverse thing and I actually hit him and he went down hard, he was mad. I love OEL, and he'll tell you he was mad at me because he wasn't really ready for it, and I did hit him and he went down hard. That can backfire sometimes too.
So let's then end on a question about winning and the ultimate success. What is the difference? Because it must be a different type of feeling. The difference between winning as a player versus winning as a coach.
Yeah, listen, the ultimate's a player. I mean, you're with your buddies, 21 guys all year, and you come to the pinnacle. I mean, you look at the Washington Capitals last year. I mean, it was incredible the way they celebrate all that. As a coach, it's being a teacher and building something together. And for me, the passion is to come to Arizona, this franchise, and try to make this into a winner. I mean, this would be the ultimate fee. It could be, if we could ever win a Stanley Cup, it could be the best Stanley Cup I've ever had if we could do this. So that keeps me going.
Excellent. Rick, thanks so much for taking time.
It's
a game day, and players or general managers and players and certainly coaches don't necessarily do this on game days, but you've taken the time off, so we appreciate it. Thanks so much.
I just won't sleep today. That's fine.